thank you very much, Josh, for getting us on screen. And I'm assuming with that, yes, we've hit the required time, so we'll make a start. Hello, and it's a real joy to be speaking to you on this very special occasion of the ESU's 100th birthday in the United States. Like every other organisation, we've all had to move into a very digital space in the last few months. And the way in which our colleagues in New York and ESU friends all over America have been able to come together and deliver such a wonderful programme for us all is a testament to the adaptability and the commitment of the ESU's members and staff. So from all of us on screen at the moment and everybody else in the international community, huge congratulations to the ESU US. A very happy birthday and thank you for this fabulous conference. Professor James Raven, Chair of the Board of Governors of the English-Speaking Union of the Commonwealth, and I are so pleased to have the chance to speak with everyone today. And it's my role first to provide just a very brief update on some of the activities and plans for the ESU worldwide. One of the things that we've realised during lockdown is that the young people with whom we work and our educational systems are way ahead of most of us when it comes to interacting through digital media. Many countries have been able to run their public speaking and debating and Shakespeare competitions and other events online, and to get a very high level of uptake, which is most encouraging because we may be more digital than physical for some time to come, I suspect. For those of you who weren't online earlier, the International Council meeting had its AGM today and has elected Jonathan Calland of ESU Chile as the next president of the ESU International Council. I know Jonathan's on the call this afternoon. Talking about technology, I mean, Jonathan is a real advocate for technology and he's already working on a prototype ESU app. So with colleagues in India, and it's designed to bring Oracy resources straight to our young people's phones. So that's something exciting to watch for the future. Globally, as the ESU, we're committed to running the International Public Speaking Competition this coming year, with the final taking place in May or June 2021. A number of the ESU admin team in the UK, you may not be aware, are only just returning to work full-time this month, having been furloughed since March. So we'll make the International Public Speaking Competition a real priority, get the dates and topics for the speeches out to you as soon as possible. Nobody knows quite what the ESU will be able to do next year, what the world will look like at that point. So we will plan for a digital competition. And if there's the possibility of holding a final in London, then we'll obviously consult you all about your wishes and your ability to travel at that point. We'll also look at the viability of holding our debate tours and the Summer Debate Academy next year, both of which have attracted so many young people from around the world in recent years. I've been privileged to speak to ESU organisers in very many of our member countries in recent weeks. And one of the things that unifies us is a concern that the educational attainment gap, which is sadly a feature of all countries and education systems, has grown even wider during this pandemic. The young people who have had access to supportive home lives, conversations around the table at family meals, and the encouragement to pursue their studies will continue to do well. Those in situations of economic disadvantage and greater challenge will need even more time and investment to improve the spoken language skills which the ESU knows are so valuable. And if ever there was a time for us to recommit together to the ESU's aims and objectives, to reach out to those who need our support. It's now. Through our membership, our volunteering, and our financial commitment, we can make a difference and continue to tell the stories of lives transformed through our programmes, just as Martin Tipping was encouraging us all to do in yesterday's presentation, for those of you who were able to attend. In his opening address to the Centennial Conference yesterday, Dr. Paul Beresford-Hill spoke about the common language and the values that we share. The friendships that have grown out of those connections and that shared commitment to provide opportunities for others, particularly young people, give us a real strength in our charitable and educational work. So in looking forward to the coming year, and with a real conviction that we can continue to change the world for the better, student by student, school by school, in all our communities, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for your part in the ESU's global family. It's so important. Thank you very much and happy birthday, ESU USA. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Hello, everybody. Can I say, first of all, what a very great pleasure and privilege it is for me to speak at this annual meeting and to be able to join you in celebrating the centenary of the founding of the ESU of the United States. I'm actually coming from here. I'm going to attempt, as long as I've followed what my young son tells me I can do, I'll attempt to show you where I'm actually coming from, which is here. Does that work? That should show you where I'm from. But I'll return. That's my college in Cambridge. As we just heard from the Director General of the ESU of the Commonwealth, your ESU and the ESU in Britain and around the world has transformed the lives of hundreds of thousands of people over the years. And the need for us is greater than ever, given, as we've just been hearing, the sadly increasing attainment gap, which Jane and others have spoken so far. And particularly the need for us to continue to help young people from disadvantaged backgrounds. I am, or perhaps rather I should say I was decades ago, among them. I grew up in very rural East Anglia in Britain, actually in part of my life in the village of Groton. Let me try and oh, that's a rather poor sketch of Groton, but from the house. But it's the manor house there, which is actually the new manor house, believe it or not, was from where John Winthrop left in 1630 to found the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Where is he? There he is. He left his manor house in Groton, but I was certainly not to the manor born. The ESU, via our speaking competition, in fact, when I actually spoke about John Winthrop, as it happened, gave me the opportunity to pursue higher education and notably also to travel abroad for the very first time to the United States, to travel and to stay for a month, care of a then branch-to-branch exchange. And my wonderful hosts were the New Brunswick, New Jersey branch of the ESU, where I made lifelong friends, remarkable friends who continue to support me when I return to the US as part of my career as a historian at Cambridge. Every research trip began with a visit to New Brunswick, not least to meet continuing ESU exchange students between the US and the UK. And I'm hugely proud and honored to support all our members today in this life-changing work of the ESU for young people through our speaking and debating and performance competitions and our participative events. And most especially, and this is my theme today, when we have new and extraordinary challenges of language and of debate. And it might be worth really examining three particular aspects of that. the three aspects that we face, I think, in building confidence in communication among young people. To combat where it exists, increasing incivilities, increasing inequalities, and increasing discrimination. Although I suppose one might add that one area where greater discrimination is needed is over the veracity of news and knowledge. I'll come back to that. Now, I don't, especially today, as we celebrate in our celebratory mood, I don't want to be too gloomy about these issues, and there really are real positives to be explored. But there seems to me to be two causes that propel these three challenges. One that's developed over recent years, and that is the negative aspects of what otherwise are positive new social media advances. And the other, which has been suddenly thrust upon us, as we all know, the tragedy that is the COVID-19 pandemic and what has resulted from that. Now, the first of these two, the impact of new social media, actually takes me back to that first visit of mine to the United States. When I returned to the UK, I was asked to give a presentation to the local ESU branch in Colchester, and they pressed me to give a frank assessment of the pluses and minuses of my experience. Well, it was a very unbalanced account, given how many positives there were, headed, as it still is, by my experience of and benefit from a very particular type of generosity and open-heartedness of not just my American hosts, but everyone I came into contact. Open-heartedness, open politeness and generosity is something to me, and I feel this profoundly, quintessentially American, particularly in these sometimes difficult times. And I want to return to civility in a moment. But of my very limited negatives about my first American experience was something that really surprised me. This was that even where I was, in metropolitan New Jersey, and I think I love New Jersey more than any other state, I have to say, almost all of the news available was extremely local. It was about localities, sometimes statewide, but often privileged above what was happening in other parts of the United States, let alone in the world. Now, I think all of that has changed quite remarkably. The realm of social media, of worldwide news, and its extraordinary accessibility is now a wonderful thing. And I see from my own teenage children and how they can follow and indeed participate in events worldwide. But the paradox of that is that the same openness to new experiences, these experiences online, has also brought changes in the way in which people speak to each other and speak to each other publicly. And above all, to our very language of communication, and to a large extent, to the way in which debate and discussion can take place among our civic and political leaders. Now, quite rightly, it seems to me, great attention is given to civility in culturally diverse societies to enable citizens with very different beliefs, values, and attitudes to live peacefully together. And we all know about debates about whether being uncivil extends to the expression of views that upsets others, and of attempts to ban hate speech and the definition of what hate is. But I think it goes much further than that, or more subtly in a way, for civility can be regarded as providing a standard of conversational decorum, of how, as President Obama put it, and I quote him, of how to disagree without being disagreeable. And that's proved a moot point in an online transatlantic discussion series that I've chaired for the ESU in the UK in recent months. And I have to say that in one event, we had the great privilege of having your chairman, Dr. Beresford Hill, join us on the panel. Among our speakers, or some speakers, argued that the candid discussion of potentially inflammatory issues should be inhibited by the civil duty to respect the feelings of those with whom we disagree. And, moreover, that this duty should, if necessary, be enforced by legislation. Others have argued that this is a dangerous limitation to the notion of respect. the open expression that some find unacceptable is essential to the work of civil society and democracy. It is, to quote, a civilized acceptance of difference. Two of the speakers in our series, in fact, distinguished between incivility and combativeness, rigorous debate, and the importance even of incivility. I thought this was really interesting. The leading speaker on this was from Texas, Professor Emily Sidnor of Southwestern University, the recent author of Disrespectful Democracy, The Psychology of Political Incivility. And she spoke to us from live online from Texas and argued that although negativity and rudeness in politics had been increasing, she thought, for decades, and I think I agree with her, she was unsure how what she called this tide of impolite to outrageous language affects our reactions to media coverage and our political behaviour. She went on to argue that, and I quote her, citizens now need to be able to tolerate or even welcome incivility in the public sphere in order to participate in the democratic process. Yet individuals who are turned off by incivility are not, she conceded, brought back into civil presentation of issues. And that might well be a critical point. And in fact, responding to her, Teresa Bajan, Professor of Political Theory at the University of Oxford, examined our calls for greater civility in light of 17th century debates about religious toleration. Many of the pressing questions facing liberal democracies today about how to handle partisanship and hate speech actually closely recall, she said, early modern concerns about the limits of toleration and the dangers posed by sectarianism, evangelical expression, and so-called, as it was called then, persecution of the tongue. And I'm looking forward, incidentally, to a follow-up discussion of that on the 2nd of December. So if you're free, do join us. It will be led by a historian who teaches the history of debate in the 17th century with the intention of informing students today about why debate is important and how it can be conducted civilly. Then as now, thinkers appealed to civility as a way to reconcile the tension between diversity and disagreement. In this, determining what civility requires can be very complicated. While some restraint on expression is surely necessary to make disagreement tolerable, accusations of incivility can easily become pretexts for persecution. Teresa Bajan was particularly interested in Roger Williams. Let me bring him up if I can. There he is. Founder, of course, of Rhode Island, whose calls for politeness were not superficial, but rather sophisticated efforts to think through how we can all live together in a civil society where we can have starkly binary opposite views. Something that's rather pertinent at the moment, I suppose. How do we coexist when people divide in their fundamental commitments? Well, knowing how to disagree without being disagreeable, of how to speak and debate and to use language effectively and politely is paramount. Roger Williams of Rhode Island thought that, as he put it, in a wild and savage country such as America, his words, not mine, friendly, polite greetings were particularly important. And in the 18th century, which is actually my own period as a historian, learned politeness became widely regarded as superior to more basic civility, which could be displayed by anyone. Williams was cognizant of resolute opinions all around him, as well as being fiercely certain of his own belief. So he was crucially asked how we can, so he crucially asked us how we can live together when that is so. And I have to say, he's therefore a much more sympathetic figure for us, I suggest, than say the intransigent Winthrop, whom I mentioned earlier, with his inflexible Puritanism. Politeness had to be learned all the more, as it is in the conduct of debate. It doesn't preclude combativeness, as one of our other speakers in the series, a former MP, insisted, but it also spotlights the sites of debate and the agreed rules of arenas, of the honourable exchanges in parliamentary or indeed senatorial chambers, but where other, alas, and contrasting and sometimes anonymous platforms are now extended to cyberspace. And in all of this, really what I'm arguing is that nothing can take the place of careful, considered language. What we're doing in our work in the ESU is to raise the level, raise standards from the brutal, crude tweeting of simplistic messages, of offering respect by civility, of offering guidance, and I say this as a historian, where the standards and orientation of reported truth are sharply declining, I fear. And these are extraordinary and difficult times. Ones where, as we know happily from the screens, we are all on here sharing this moment together, where new media can be as much friend as foe. And in fact, it's maybe to make it friendlier, if I can do this. Let me go to my Cambridge study to make it a little bit more friendlier online, so you can see where I am. This present situation brings new and welcome perspectives on concerns about the communication and educational pros and cons of social media. It forces consideration of benefits and risks in an entirely new context, asking in new ways what beneficial online communication might achieve. And I was very excited actually by some of the suggestions this morning at the ICM meeting of the ESU and what this might do to bring the ESU family together in furthering our aims worldwide. But it's here that the challenge to confront incivility intersects with the other two challenges that I mentioned at the beginning, those of inequality and discrimination, where the COVID emergency only exacerbates the predicament, that difference in inequality or equality in going forward that Jane mentioned earlier. Social and educational equalities are more than ever in plain view, and the English-speaking Union, in line with its founding principles, has already added its own particular voice to the millions of those expressing shame over the unequal treatment of a country's citizens. And it makes us look at our own society as well as to discrimination in many parts of the world. And I thought this morning it was very interesting that there were so many of our friends around the world online for the ICM meeting, and we saw them from their studies or their sitting rooms, and yet they were from many parts of the world, all over the world, where that sitting room or study was in a town or a settlement and in a country which was experiencing increasing divisions, partly caused by social, partly caused by economic differences. But without the careful use of language and the accountability of language which much media supports, of anonymity, and too few demands on its listeners, brings such polarization, intolerance, and discrimination, at least, as I say, social discrimination, if not knowledge discrimination. One thing is clear, that the confidence we give young people to speak out must also extend to how they do so, how they learn appropriately to persuade and inspire us by effective communication without resorting to the crude language of abuse. And surely the worst thing about the employment of the language hate from the highest possible level is the terrible example it offers to the young. So I think our contribution is vital. So in developing language skills, we can stress the importance of listening, of respect, of not talking over one another, not insulting, not demeaning, not quoting untruths. Yes, a rich appreciation of rhetorical skill, but also of oratorical influence, of the relationship between persuasion and emotion, of the value of nuance, and of course, even of humor. And I'll close really by thinking, well, we might need to think of such examples at this time of presidential debates, if debate's the right word, of that famous put down of Lloyd Benson, or of Ronald Reagan's self-deprecating but also combative skewering of his opponent by saying that he would not make age an issue of the election and not highlight the youthful inexperience of his opponent. both examples were prepared wit, clearly, but they were wit all the same. And if you want spontaneity, I usually often quote this in teaching debate, what better example than that famous retort by one of the ESU's founders, Winston Churchill. In one heated debate in the House of Commons, the Honourable Nancy Astor denounced the Honourable Churchill in exasperated terms. "If I were your wife," she exclaimed, "I would put poison in your coffee." "Well," replied Churchill, "if I were your husband, I would drink it." Apparent unacceptable rudeness tempered by acceptable wit. All of this is part of what we might call the cultural intimacy of language, of explaining and understanding nuance, and therefore also of avoiding misunderstanding. And I just end with a few very wide-ranging examples of this, from the far-reaching to the intimate. In my own work as a historian, the tragic misinterpretation of the Treaty of Waitangi, where Maoris ceded their lands with no notion of what property meant, or the misunderstanding of missionaries among Native Americans, whose at oneness with the natural world, the at oneness of the natural world of Native Americans, meant that they had no conception actually of a word, of what the word meant, or a conception of what wilderness meant, whether or not it be a voice crying in it or not. And of Winthrop again, some might know that one controversy concerned claims that he had blamed an incident upon too great a desire for prayers, for want of prayer, which actually meant that want, not a desire, but an absence of prayer. And to close with two personal examples, returning to my first visit to the United States, it's not just the British and Americans who are divided by a common language, but of all of us within our respective communities. When Elizabeth Boyd of the New Brunswick ESU took me down to Washington, she rather lavishly hired a suite at the Mayflower Hotel. We met up with some of her friends, and before dinner, we ordered drinks, all very civil. Betty asked for a glass of sherry, but going back to her southern roots, she ordered a dish of sherry. In an instance, incredible service, the waiter placed before her a perfectly arranged pyramid of cherries on a small, neat dish. Difference in language and resolving politeness encapsulated. And finally, some years later, when I was entertained by members of the ESU of Japan, I was aware that there was a great and expected formality to the civility around me, and something that I needed explaining so that I was not impolite. You must be prepared, said my host, that upon my introduction of you, my son and daughter-in-law will bow to you. Ah, thank you, I said. And then I asked, do I bow back? He looked astonished. No, just forwards. Well, forwards we all go. Many congratulations again on the centenary. Here is to you. Here is to the work you do and to we do, to language, to nuance, to civility as the handmaiden of clarity and understanding, and the nemesis of divisiveness and intolerance. More perhaps of the type of the late lamented Alastair Cook, less Fox and Friends, less, dare I say, of the type of the 30th of September debate from Cleveland, and more of the ESU middle school debates here in the US, more of our wonderful ESU international public speaking competitions, which help and inspire thousands. More, in fact, of the ESU of the United States and the Commonwealth.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much. Absolutely wonderful. Thank you. That's great.
All right, now we'll be adding Julia Vanderwater.
Well, it's afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Julia Vanderwater, a member of the ESU National Board and an immediate past branch president. Welcome to the first of two sets of breakout sessions geared to branch members. We thank you for your attendance and hopefully your participation as well. The subjects for the breakout sessions emerge from comments by branch members during recent regional roadshow events. Conversations with branch leaders across the country generated the topics to be addressed today and Friday. I am so grateful to branch members, excuse me, and national staff willing to participate. We will use the meeting format with opportunities for everyone to ask questions. I would kindly ask that you remain muted until your presenter indicates that it's the time. In today's first hour, Dr. Karen Blair Brand, Central PA, and Jeffrey Schnabel, Kansas City, will analyze ESU's educational programming to determine if programming suits tomorrow's needs and if there are gaps or areas for future growth. In the second hour, Betty Trevino-Roth, who's on the national staff, will consider the National Shakespeare Competition and the details in store for 2021, particularly those specific to the branch level competitions. And finally, Helena Fontaine, also of the national staff, will highlight the Evelyn Wrench Speaker Program, currently virtual, and program elements once the presentations return to in-person at branch meetings. I'm sure you are aware that fundraising occurring during the Centennial period will benefit these two national programs. And we'll begin with Karen and Jeff.
Karen Blair Brand and I will be co-hosting this breakout session today. Karen is the president of the Central PA branch, and she's also on the national board and the chair of the Education Committee. I'm Jeff Schnabel. I'm the past president of the Kansas City branch and also on the national board. We thought we would take a different approach to reviewing our educational programs. Instead of reviewing each and every one, we thought we would take a different, more interesting and hopefully a more valuable approach at looking at our programming. We aren't really setting policy here. We just want to kind of brainstorm and think outside the box, try to get a different perspective on how our programming is set up now and maybe how it would look in the future. So let's start by taking a look at the entire list of programs that are offered by the ESU. These are listed alphabetically. Now, excluding two programs, one being ARNIC, which is a New York City-based program. Which program do you think is the oldest program that we have? Which has been around the longest? Does anyone have any idea? Actually, it is actually the Evelyn Wrench Lecture Series. It actually began in 1920. Now, taking a look at all of these, which do you think is the newest program that is currently available to all branches? Which one of these programs? Actually, the newest one really is Shakespeare Competition. It actually began in 1983. So did you ever stop to think that the last time that the ESU added a new program to our curriculum that was offered to all branches was about 36 years ago. Now, for just a moment, to be fair, the middle school debate was introduced in 2011. And we are partnering, of course, with Claremont McKenna College Middle School Debate Program, which is really considered the international leader in middle school debate education. The program is very limited and currently is a program that is just has a few branches involved: New York City, New Jersey, Washington, D.C., and Sandhills in the Sandhills branch. So if most of our educational programs are more than 3 decades old, is it really time to maybe look at our programming with a fresh new approach?
But before we can do that, what are the challenges to adding new ESU programs? It takes time to create and develop a new program. It requires resources, staff to administer new programs, both in national office and in our branches. And in some cases, it may require another source of funding to start up and maintain a new program.
Well, for purposes of this exercise, let's set that aside for the moment. And besides, there may be other ways of approaching and introducing new educational programs, depending on what it is. So,
Jeff,
yes,
can you hear me? This is Sylvia Bruton.
yes,
I was on the national board in 2011 when we approved of the middle school debate program.
uh-huh,
Let me ask us to potentially consider that when we are looking to create new programs, that we also look carefully at the ones we've done in the past to see if there is some way, for instance, we might improve that program rather than creating something different. For instance, in the middle school debate program, we had eventually had debates between the young schools, the schools here in Louisville, Kentucky, to international schools of similar age, the middle schools in England. And we set up times for them to be able to debate on more international topics, which turned out to be very successful. But of course, my term as president, ended at a certain point. And I'm just saying that there is a potential for reaching beyond our borders to have international competitions or international debates. But
yes.
if we look at programs and say, is there some new twist we can add to that program to enhance it?
Well, thank you, Sylvia. I appreciate that comment because actually we are going to be actually talking about enhancing existing programs, exactly what you're suggesting. So yes, we will be involved with that aspect of our review analysis of our programs. So if we step back and look at our programs from the big picture, let's say at the micro level, let's first create major categories for our programs, and then we'll put our programs into those categories. So this exercise will allow us to really analyze our entire programming to see if there's maybe a different approach we can take to finding new programs. So to get us started, I put up 2 categories. Let's come up with for the first 2, English, the spoken language. Now remember, these are major categories. So you would look at the programs on the left, current programs, and see if we could come up with a major category. The other one that I put up to get us started is the lecture programs, just as a broad category. And we will also include ARNIC and the middle school debate, of course. So what would you think would be another major category? If you take a look at all of these on the left, maybe What about perhaps immigrant services maybe, or perhaps scholarship opportunities, because we got so many different scholarship programs. What about maybe international outreach, or perhaps community outreach? So if we were to put these programs in these categories, let's take a look at these 6 to start with, these major categories. Let's put our programs actually in these categories now. So we'll switch. So you can see what we've got under the English, the spoken language. We have, of course, Shakespeare competition, middle school debate, international public speaking. In the lecture programs, we have both the, of course, the Evelyn Wrench lectures and branches have their own lecture programs. And immigrant services, we have Arnick and English in Action, the scholarship opportunities, Luard Morse, T-Lab for teachers, and Walter Hines page, and the branch scholarships. International outreach, the T-Lab Travel and Learn, and the secondary school exchange. And then a category we kind of lump several of our branch programs, local programs, community outreach, where you have cultural and social events, whether it's the Queen's birthday tea or whatever, other cultural programs, or where you at the branch level might want to introduce the ESU to some of your local community organizations to let them know about what you're doing. So let's take a look at these major categories and that's missing. And do you think there might be something that might be reasonable to add to this list? Let's first take a look at a major research study that was done a couple of years ago. This is really a pretty valuable research study that was done.
Yes, I'm here. This is Karen. I'm on my phone now.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was muted on my phone. So the research study was on readiness of new entrants to the U.S. workforce. The report is based on a detailed survey of 431 human resource officials conducted by the conference board, corporate voices of working families, the Partnership for 21st Century Skills, and the Society for Human Resource Management. The objective was to examine employers' views on the readiness of new entrants to the U.S. workforce. Groups included recently hired graduates from high schools, 2-year colleges, technical schools, and 4-year colleges. The findings were incoming generation after the baby boomers were sorely lacking much needed workplace skills. The future workplace is here, and it is ill prepared, concludes the report. The findings reflect employers' growing frustrations over the preparedness of new entrants to the workforce. Employers expect young people to arrive with a core set of basic knowledge and the ability to apply their skills in the workplace. And the reality is not matching the expectation. And we have another slide that we are going to talk about. Writing was specifically singled out. The survey found an especially big gap in writing skills. Nearly 3/4 or 72% of incoming high school graduates are viewed as deficient in basic English writing skills, including grammar and spelling. And when asked about readiness with regard to applied skills related to the workplace, the greatest deficiency was reported in written communications. memos, letters, complex technical reports. 81% of survey participants say their high school graduate hires were deficient in written communications. Poor writing skills also continue to be a problem among both 2-year and 4-year college graduates. Nearly half of all survey participants, or 47%, report that 2-year college graduates are deficient in this skill. Go ahead, Jeff.
You know, I think after you look at this this research, we might just have maybe another educational program category here. You know, the entire history of the ESU, at least in the United States, has been focused on the spoken word. So what about using English as the written word? Could we say that one of our goals as an educational nonprofit organization is to offer a program or service that helps to address a major problem facing the business community? Could the ESU make a name for itself by addressing the lack of writing skills and written communication in general? So if we were to add English, the written word, to our major categories, what programs could we create to address that need? We'll change the slide. So if we first have to ask, who is our target audience? Is it high school students? Is it college level students, or maybe both? Do we actually teach grammar or spelling? No, that's not the primary focus here. Do we create a written essay competition for high school students? That's pretty basic. Could we make the essay competition maybe a major event on the scale of our Shakespeare competition? What about creative writing programs like short stories, poetry contests, things like that? So this gives you an idea of some of the kinds of programs that we could put in this major category, English, the written language. So I'm just throwing out ideas here. I know that the Cleveland branch is actually, and actually Denver also, that I remember, they've developed some writing programs for their own branches that have been pretty successful. Bill, you're with Cleveland. Do you have any comments about your program? If Bill could unmute. If not.
Yeah, I was just typing in the chat room a little bit of a background on what we tried. And I shared this with the Breakout group in Washington last fall. And we did actually begin it. My idea was an Evelyn Wrench Peace Prize in prose and poetry. And that would be from grades K through 12 in 4 different categories. So kindergarten through 2nd grade, 3rd through 5th grade, 6th through 8th, and then high school students submitting a poem of 100 lines or less, an essay of 500 to 1,000 words or less on the subject of civility or peace, what peace means in your community, some way to reconnect it with Evelyn Wrench's original vision of the English language bringing us together and working towards world peace in some way. Now we're talking about, on the local level, just it could be peace in the home. What does peace mean in your home? What does peace mean in your life? And so we I sent out maybe 300 packets to as many of the teachers in the local school systems that I could access. And we were beginning to get a response up until February, when everything sort of fell apart with the COVID crisis. So I've got some submissions of poetry from some grade school students, some submissions of essays from some high school students, a couple of which were extraordinarily well written, I have to say. Our intention was to offer prizes in all 4 categories, cash prizes, and then produce a collection, a book that could be sold to parents and grandparents, that could be distributed freely to the school systems to help them with their own writing programs as examples of prize-winning essays or poems. The idea was to try to really establish a relationship with these teachers that could help them in their classroom, as well as give the students some positive feedback. And our goal was to have a public meeting in the fall of all of the prize-winning writers reading the top 6 maybe, or the top 3 in each category, reading their entries at a public event that would honor them and would award the prizes. Now, again, all of that fell through because of the COVID crisis and our inability to meet in public. I still have great faith in this program. I think it is essential. I think it is really where the English Speaking Union has been remiss in terms of programming the written language. And I would also like to start to try to involve people, students from the kindergarten level and up, rather than just hit them in high school or in middle school, but begin to develop their skills in both written and spoken English from an earlier age.
A few things that we learned, just to throw in from the poetry competition that took place on the Happy Hour program, is that our own members, the adults that are here today, are also interested in writing. So I think that to encourage all age groups in some sort of writing capacity could be further explored by those of us who are retired teachers, and I know there are a number of those. We were very fortunate to have the works reviewed and evaluated by members from the Central Florida branch as well as the Kentucky branch, just for this particular program. But you could reach out and have a number of teachers evaluate that writing who are already our members or our retired teacher members as well, because those people have great skills that we hate to lose, and we can encourage good writing. I think it's very important to kind of tie together the ideas that we had at the beginning of the conversation, that conversation should be civil. However, if we're not teaching that civil writing in the classroom, there's nowhere for that conversation to begin. So I think that we as an English speaking union can create writing opportunities that feature those sorts of civil discourse discussions in essays and in poetry. And I think I agree with Bill. It is absolutely something that the English speaking union is missing from these educational programs.
I would just to jump in once more. So the idea was then that this is something that could develop into a national competition, not just a local competition, but there could be a national writing prize, or it could be a branch, regional branch competitions, and then from the region to the national branch. And then there could be a series of books produced collecting prize-winning essays and poems that could then further help us to use those books in the classroom with the teachers and to develop the thing further. And then from there, jumping onto Sylvia's point, it could become an international program. There's no reason why we could not have an international prize in essay writing around the idea of peace or civility, or any topic that you so choose. But I really like the idea of relating it back to our foundation, which is Sir Evelyn Wrench and his vision of a world at peace through the medium of the English language in terms of communication.
Well, I agree, Bill. I think, you know, your program sounds like one that could really grow and develop. It could just be one of many different ideas that we could expand maybe into a national program. I know that Bruce with the Denver branch, they've had an essay writing competition for over 10 years, and it's been very successful. So, you know, what we've done, you know, sort of on a branch by branch basis, I think perhaps might be an opportunity for us to think about this new category, maybe on a national or perhaps even international basis at some point down the line. So now let's move on to maybe thinking about one more major category. I know that we could come up with 4 or 5 more, but let's just pick one more major category for us to talk about. What about, let's say, since we're right in the middle of this, what about digital programming? I mean, I think that would be very pertinent. Just like most businesses and organizations, the ESU was forced to enter into the world of digital programming due to the pandemic. We started with happy hour programs to see what level of interest there was. We added the Evelyn Wrench speakers from time to time for our online programming. And, you know, some branches have even started using Zoom for their own lecture programs, or certainly if they have board of directors meetings online. So there's a variety of ways that we can use digital programming, and that will continue to be an ongoing major educational category in the future. It will give the ESU another way to actually bring members together to connect with one another. There are lots of possibilities for digital programming content in the future.
Let's now take a look at some other existing major categories and see if we can expand them. For example, what about immigrant services? If we look at research studies on minority populations around the US, minorities are the primary demographic engine of the nation's future growth. New census studies project that the nation will become minority white in 2045. More interesting are statistics on the immigrant population in the US. A bipartisan research group called New American Economy has done an extensive analysis of immigrant populations by state and city. For example, in the state of Virginia, immigrants are 12.4% of the population, and their spending power is about $31.6 billion. In Florida, immigrants are 20.8% of the population, and their spending power is $91.9 billion. In New York City metro area, immigrants are 29% of the population, and their spending power is $162.3 billion. In California, immigrants are 26.9% of the population, and their spending power is $282.8 billion.
You know, we simply cannot ignore these statistics. I mean, this is really interesting data that really needs to be addressed. The ESU is simply, quote, a movement to draw together in the bonds of comradeship the English-speaking peoples of the world, which was a quote from Sir Evelyn Wrench, our founder. We already have English in Action as one immigrant service. Could we expand that category? What other immigrant services could we offer? What about, just to throw out some ideas, what if you take a look in the bottom left here under immigrant services, what about naturalization and citizenship assistance? Or what about, ESL classes? Now, one approach to these other services, if your branch doesn't have the manpower or the resources to start this in your own branch, you can always find a partner in your community who's already offering immigrant services, and perhaps create a joint program where the ESU might offer some of its members to offer voluntary help with the other partner. And that's exactly what we did in Kansas City with the Kansas City Public Library, where we shared our English in Action program with the library's immigrant services program, and it's a very good partnership. So another possibility is that the ESU partner might be able to provide some financial assistance to the other partner. So our involvement in expanding immigrant services doesn't necessarily require us to start a program from scratch. We could find a partner to create a joint program. This program possibly could be a hybrid of ESU's very successful ARNIC program that's offered at the national office in New York City, which is in its 7th year. A branch program could have similar services that we offer in ARNIC without the required manpower that we need in ARNIC right now. So the branch hybrid ARNIC program could operate perhaps under the English in Action branding name with multiple immigrant services under it, such as the naturalization and citizenship services, so on. So there's just one final question before we close. What would be the benefit of adding a new educational program to our lineup? Well, for one thing, it offers more choices for the branches, and in some cases, more affordable program options. It expands the diversity of the types of programming that we offer. It makes the ESU more visible as an education-based nonprofit organization. And finally, it expands opportunities for pursuing new categories of grant funding. So to conclude, this was simply an opportunity to look at the big picture of ESU's programming and where we might take it as we enter into our 2nd century. So we invite you to take these big picture ideas back home with you to your branches and let us know what your thoughts are. Karen, if
And I'd just like to, let me unmute myself here. I'd just like to say, we're always looking, as the chair of the Education Committee, we're always looking for input from our branches for programming, especially in their upcoming happy hour series that will be continuing beginning in January and will run every 2 weeks for January, February, and March. So if you have any thoughts or ideas for today's breakout session, please send them to me. And Josh, I believe there's a slide with my email address on it. And does anyone have any questions before we end this breakout session and move on to the next one? I believe, Josh, there's one more slide to be put up.
we go back to the,
We were showing that slide. I'll
go
bring
back
it
to
back
the
up.
previous slide.
Right, okay, the previous one, yeah. So any questions from anyone in the audience? We appreciate your participation, and if you don't have questions now, please send us your programs and ideas. Someone in your community, someone at your local university, or someone in your branch. There's all types of great folks that could do a program for the ESU, not just locally in your branch, but either at the regional or for our national programs like Happy Hour. We welcome your ideas.
Thank you. I don't know if you heard me say thank you, but
Yes, I did.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, I
Who's
think
that?
there's a myriad opportunities here for the English speaking union. And so many of us have done some portions of these in the past, and it would be a great idea to be able to share some of these terrific ideas that we have. And as we go forward, even a committee to do this. I've always thought too, we need to expand our opportunities for students to not just go over to England to study in English alone, but in other subject matter as well, that is more relevant to the entire world, as opposed to simply English language. So I know that that is one of our focuses, but I'm just saying we might consider something like that in the future. But there's so many wonderful ideas that thank you that all of you have presented. I'm just real impressed too, especially with what's going on in Cleveland. You are an inspiration. Thank you, Bill.
Absolutely, Bill. You're moving and grooving.
Well, I have a question for everyone, and that has to do with procedures, I guess. How do we contact teachers to get them involved? I had set up, I had planned to put a table up at the annual meeting of the Teachers of English Language Conference in Ohio. They have one every year in February. And then the COVID struck, so I wasn't able to do that. So, I mean,
No, I haven't, but you might be able to do. We partner with our Department of Education here in Pennsylvania. And the other thing is we go through our intermediate units. There's 29 of them in Pennsylvania. Myself and our Shakespeare coordinator a couple of years ago, we actually had the opportunity to present and give information about our Shakespeare competitions to all 29 of the intermediate units throughout the state of Pennsylvania. And then they get down to the, the administrators for each of the schools. And they can help you single up and get to the teachers in the schools, in high schools, or whatever level you're looking at, middle school, or the grade schools. They can help you connect with the appropriate people. But your school administrators, they are approachable and they do want to help, and they do appreciate connecting with specific teachers, and which will in the end benefit students in their communities. That's how we've been doing it.
Is Bruce with the Denver branch? Is Bruce here online with us? I don't know if Josh, if you could unmute.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear
There's
me?
Bruce. Hi, Bruce.
Hi.
Do you want to say a few words about your successful program in Denver? You said it's been going for 10 years.
10 years, yes. We have a committee that runs the competition every year. There's anywhere from 4 to 6 different committee members. Most of them are teachers, and so they have contacts already. But we've tried different methods of sending sort of an email blast to all of the teacher email addresses in the Denver metro area. Sometimes that's not very successful. A lot of teachers ignore emails that they know nothing about. I'm sure they're inundated with a lot. And the topic varies from year to year. Sometimes topics are very exciting and we'll get a lot of submissions where it's difficult for the few committee members to read through them and judge them. But it's sort of a growing process. And even after 10 years, we're still finding ways to tweak it. This year will be interesting because it will all be done virtually. We normally have an award ceremony where we have the winning students read their submission to the group at a nice venue. It usually happens around Christmas, so it's sort of a holiday party awards ceremony. And this year, obviously, it'll have to be different, something online. But we're currently developing this year's competition. And as I said in my chat comment, 5 years ago, when we had done this for 5 years, we put together a book of the winning submissions for those first 5 years. And it just occurred to me that after 10 years, it's probably a good time to do that again, pick up on the next 5 years. So I've been a judge on the committee, so I've read some of the submissions a few of the years, but I'm really not the best person in the branch to talk about it because I've never chaired the committee or worked closely with the teachers whose students submit the essays or fiction for the competition. So
I just wanted to throw in a thought about the marketing that could be some assistance for us. This applies also to the Shakespeare competition and any other times that we're trying to reach out to teachers. If we could create some good marketing tools, perhaps National could help us with this. They could be videos, they could be other more interesting digital ways to reach out, not just snail mail, paper flyers. Those tend to get lost, as do email blasts. But if we could come up with some more creative ways to reach out, I think that we would be able to get better results. So whether we're reaching out to kids to have them write, or whether we're reaching out to them to compete in the Shakespeare competition, or trying to find teachers to send for TLAB, being able to reach out in a more digital format, a more engaging format is always a better option for us, if we can think of a way.
Yeah, that's a big issue. Everything's changed. I mean, you would be wasting your money to take out a newspaper ad these days, or a radio ad or something like that. But there are publications like Poets and Writers and a few other national publications that do have calls for submissions on a very regular basis, and it's possible. It's difficult on the local level. I mean, to go to a national publication and say any Clevelander or any Northern Ohio person, please submit. If you're, a school student or whatever. But there might be some way that National can help with that as well. But we need some kind of and this is not me. I'm not a techie, but I mean, the world has changed, and the outreach has to change. So our outreach needs to be in a digital, as Jeff was saying earlier, digital platform, whether it be through tweets, whether it be through emails or Facebook. How do we reach people now and attract them to all of our programs? And it seems that has to start at the national level, that there has to be a real push for National to reach out digitally to the country to attract them to everything we do. And it just having a passive website waiting for people to come to and explore, I don't think is enough. There has to be some kind of, but again, where do you advertise? Where do you, how do you do that?
Bill, that's why with the school, as far as schools go, that's why here in Pennsylvania, we connect with the intermediate unit directors, which they can get down to your school administrators. And those folks then can open the door to allow the teachers, instead of having a firewall up, if the teacher knows who we are and what our organization's about and why we're contacting them, then you can get to the teachers directly that will benefit. They will then, programs can then benefit the students. That's why we do it that way in various areas of Pennsylvania, because again, the school administrators, they are interested in connecting you with the teachers. And then you can get the emails, and if the teacher doesn't want to use their school email, then once they know who you are and they're interested, they're more likely to give you another email that doesn't have a firewall.
Right.
That you will be able to continue to connect with the teachers to, again, sign up students.
Yeah, I ran up against that with sending out emails. Many of them didn't get past the firewall, which they all have. I mean, they ignore anything that's not familiar to them or is not coming from someone that they're expecting generally. Which
Oh,
And the setup of educational, how that may vary by state. I'm just telling you what works here in the state of Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
You know, every state has some of their own mandates to
Right.
how their programs, how the school districts work.
But that's
Oh.
why reaching out with the T-Lab scholarships is also incredibly important. If you have a T-Lab scholar in that school, that person can be a representative, a conduit for getting the English speaking union information there. I know that I was that person when I was at South Oldham High School and every other school I've ever worked in. So it's really important to get our teachers involved in being part of us. And we have to think of creative ways to do that. That's why if they can see the transformation of what the Shakespeare program does for their students, they buy in. They want to give these opportunities to their own students.
True, and when the teachers buy in, there's no reason, Kate, why we can't have students buy in too, and have student members as well as teachers as members of our branches.
And they will
because
come
they're
back
some
to
of the
be
biggest
T-Lab
groups that we
scholars.
serve.
Yeah, it's a ripple.
Absolutely. Anyone else with any input? We appreciate the dialogue.
Karen, if I may, just to contribute again from the UK, I mean, I've just put a note on the chat, but what I'm hearing about talking to teachers directly, listening to teachers, taking the temperature of what schools are looking for and the ways in which they can be helped by our communications and the programs we offer, I think is absolutely vital. I think that's something that we've learnt to do through trial and error. We probably didn't used to engage enough and listen enough to the teachers themselves, but they know what the needs are. They will know whether a writing competition, poetry, essay, whatever it is, or a speaking competition is going to be of most use to their young people. There'll be appetite for all of that, I'm sure. But in terms of how you get to them, Twitter is used by the majority of teachers in the UK. That's where they will look to get resources and that sort of thing. It will be different in different places in the world, but your teachers will be able to tell you what works for you. So, you know, in true English speaking style, we speak, but we also listen. And this is a real good time to listen to our teachers. Thank you.
Right, and I'll just say, Karen Karpowitz and Betty Trevina Roth in the education group, they have recently tried to embellish what resources are online for teachers to help them with our programming. And Betty will be coming on next, so maybe she can just kind of refer to that with her short time that she's going to be talking about the Shakespeare competition. But yes, the resources we provide, they're great, but we have to make sure people know that they exist and they're out there for the benefit of our programs and our people. Thank you, Kate. There's putting things on Pinder. Yeah, I guess there's so many search engines, the ways we can maybe continue to enhance how we outreach and information digitally to other people.
And the good thing about a format like Pinterest is that teachers actually go there to look for creative ways to solve problems in their classrooms. And it's a sort of a non-invasive, there's not a lot of dialogue and negative or positive. It's just very much functional. So if we put up what we offer, what kind of things they could look for, what they could look for within their state or even through the national office, these things are very helpful. And there are actually even little video options there as well. So thinking of new ways in the digital world is really very important.
And sometimes even offering to teachers or students within your branch or your region to get together and try to offer maybe a 1-hour workshop or what have you. Sometimes when you reach out and you engage them, especially teachers that haven't participated, whether it's middle school debate, Shakespeare, public speaking, or whatever, you bring them in and you bring them together and you engage them more in what you want them to be able to get, and not just sitting back and just seeing everything online. I know we can't do that now, but we can still get online and offer these types of workshops for people. So anything else, anybody? Kate, is there anything else you folks are doing differently now in Kentucky that you would want to toss out there or share?
Well, the only thing I was going to throw in is that we're doing our Shakespeare, I know probably many of you are, in a very similar format to what's going to happen at National. We're trying to piggyback. In other words, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. And we are trying to do a live competition in a similar way as what National is doing, so that our students and teachers become familiar with the format and it's not such a surprise when they get there. We're very behind the Shakespeare competition, and I'd love for us to see some way to reach out for teacher scholars as well in this same format. And that could be by offering some workshops like you were throwing out, Karen, to offer workshops for teachers because they need professional development even in this environment. And it's incredibly difficult for them to get professional development. So if we can think of positive ways to do professional development for our teachers, and on those conversational options, talk about how they can apply for a TLAB scholarship if their state should be fortunate enough to offer it. I think it would be a very powerful way to reach out to teachers in this time that's very difficult.
And Kate, I think so also is that, such as in our branch here in rural Pennsylvania, we have at least several teachers actually that are master teachers for Shakespeare. They've been trained by Folger. They've done programs nationally for ESU. And so why can't we call up some of those folks to do some Saturday workshops? And, they could do them at a greater level since we have the ability online, and to gather teachers from around the country through Betty and Karen to help set some of these up to engage not only current teachers, but new ones, to try to bring
one of us who are those master teachers teach different things. So for example, my workshops are geared more to students. So working with the students prior to their Shakespeare competitions, even virtually, is very helpful. In this flip side, there are some professionals who work primarily with teachers, educating them as well. So finding out who has what skills is very, very important in this day and age. And we have lots of us out here. So I think that the outreach to those of us who have been past TLAB scholars, especially those who have gone to the Globe already, and see how many are offering these kind of workshops and network with us. We'd be happy to help, Betty. We're very
Absolutely.
happy. It's something
we need to have folks just chime in, whether you email me or contact National, so that we can set up a committee of folks, whether it's a workshop for students or teachers, that we engage in that and try to have people feel more connected. And that's another way we can build our membership as well within our branches and nationally. Those connections, and even if we're digital, we can still connect and make a difference. Bill or Bruce, do you have anything else you'd like to add for your areas for the good of the order?
Not from here. Thank you, though.
Sure. But please reach out to us because if we don't know if you have your expert teachers or what have you, let's get more of them involved to have them help us, recruit more teachers and more students.
And please reach back into your TLAB rosters. They're probably called bus teachers before the TLAB program began, because those are many people with great deals of expertise who can help you in lots of ways, whether it's reach out or other options. I know that we've had a number of those people when we've had we had one in Washington come. We have someone down in New Orleans who had also studied at Shakespeare's Globe. This is a good time to reach out and find those folks, because we're out here and we're glad to help.
Thank you, Kate. Jane, anything from the UK side? And any other comments?
I think not this afternoon. Okay. Thank you. I mean, you have so much resource, so many great ideas amongst those who are present on the call. It's great to hear. And I think, we were hearing on the international call this morning that there's a chance to share things so much more widely. And I think any good ideas that come out of any country, and especially the US at this time, are things that others can pick up and share. So it'd be great to see what comes out of the conference and to be able to put some of that more widely online to share with our international colleagues. So I wish you well with all of this. It's been a great discussion.
Thank you very much. Yes, Jonathan, this will be recorded. All our programs for the Centennial year here with ESU USA, they will all be recorded and be able to be seen by others after the conference when Josh gets them ready. I thank you all for this program. I thank my colleague Jeff, who's always wonderful to work with on presentations, and for Julia for her kind introductions, and ESU and Dr. Paul and everyone, and all of those in our ICM that may be listening too. We're all one big family, and enjoy the rest of the week as we celebrate our Centennial year. Thank you very much. Onward now to Betty Trevino Roth.
Thank you, Karen.
Hello everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Lovely. I'd like to start, of course, by thanking you for this opportunity to share some of the work that we've been doing at National in New York City. I'm very honored and very excited to be here to speak with you, and to let you all know that many of the things that you discussed are things that have been going through our heads as well, including opportunities for writing, community outreach, branch involvement. All of these things are things that we see as being integral to the competition, because we're looking at the competition not as something that the ESU just does or puts out, but an integral part of who we are as an organization. So if I may share a quick, I hope, PowerPoint with you. Bear with me just one moment. So to begin, this is our logo for the 2021 National Shakespeare Competition. And I'll just be sharing some information with you. And then, of course, there'll be time for questions at the end, if that's all right with everyone.
And Betty, just so you know, you haven't started screen sharing.
I have not started screen share. And I will do that right now. I'm so sorry. Here we are. How am I now?
All right, now you're screen sharing.
Excellent. Thank you. So this is our logo for this year. And again, the agenda, just very briefly, program information, and then some Q&A. So the competition for nationals is going to take place, is going to take place remotely as it did last year. It's our hope that the competition can return to a live format once it is safe to do so. And the branch and school competitions, of course, branches should choose the option that is best for their local conditions, as things on the ground are changing so quickly with schools opening and closing again. And we're suggesting that branches allow schools to also choose the format that is safest and most convenient for them. Some of our branches, for instance, our friends in Oklahoma, even include Western Arkansas. And so across that very large space, there are a lot of different situations. So the two formats that we're recommending, both of them to happen over the internet. The first one is the remote competition. This takes place wholly over the internet. Again, this would be a recorded competition, would be the first way of doing one of these remote competitions. The format is like the national semifinals from 2020. The school winners upload a video to YouTube and they provide a link on the school winner form. The coordinators then just have to email the links to the judges who are going to deliberate independently. The judges then get together, adjudicate. They can do that via a conference call or a Zoom meeting. The beauty of doing it this way is that it requires very little technological expertise. The teachers and the students are all very familiar at this point with uploading to YouTube and to Zoom, and working with Zoom and YouTube and and recording performances. And I think this is one way to do the competition that, as I said, requires sort of a minimum of technological expertise. The second way of doing a competition remotely is to do a live via internet competition. Now, this is going to follow the format of the national finals last year. So a Zoom meeting. You provide your participating schools, your participating students and judges with the Zoom link, the date and the time, and a performance order. The students come up, perform one at a time on the screen, just as we're taking turns speaking here. The judges then retire to a breakout room on Zoom to adjudicate and come back with the results. Really, at this point, all it requires is the ability to manage a Zoom meeting. And I think you're going to find that most teachers and really all of us at this point are getting to be a little bit Zoom experts. And of course, National is here to support you in whichever way you choose to have your competition. Other developments and initiatives for 2021. There's a new lower fee thanks to our Shakespeare Endowment Fund. We've reached, at this point, I believe it's over 500,000 of our $1 million goal. And the idea of the endowment is that it's going to fund and ensure the future of the competition in perpetuity. It will also allow for future fee reductions. And of course, we thank all of you who have so generously supported the Shakespeare Endowment Fund. So what else is new for 2021? We have lots of exciting things to discuss with you. We have new remote learning resources for teachers. And going back to what Kate said, our New York City, one of our New York City Globe Scholars from 2019, who is a doctoral candidate at Teachers College at Columbia, produced for us what we're calling our Teacher Toolkit, which are strategies, turnkey strategies, and plans that a teacher can integrate into her current curriculum, whatever she's doing in the classroom or he is doing in the classroom right now. These are strategies and activities that seamlessly integrate into what they're already doing. So in addition to the wonderful lesson plans that we already have, thanks to Sue Biondo of the Central Pennsylvania branch, we now have these new resources that are for teachers, specifically teachers that are teaching remotely, many of them using Zoom. Writing contests. You've spoken, we've listened. I've spoken to Bill Kennedy about this and also Paul Stevenson. And so we started this year with our Frankenstein competition, which I'm going to speak a little bit more about in the next slide. But that is something that we're continuing. Not all students are performers. Not all lovers of Shakespeare are actors or speakers. And this is the direction that we're going to expand the competition. This year, we're going to, as last year, have a People's Choice Award, but we're going to improve it. We're going to launch it earlier so that we can maximize the outreach benefit to branches. The People's Choice Award is a fantastic way to get people who aren't familiar with the ESU or with our competition to become invested, because they're actually voting for someone, for their student who may be a relative or a friend. And of course, it raises awareness about our programs and exposure to the organization at large. We're expanding the Teacher Recognition Award. Last year, we gave a prize to the teacher of the first place winner, and now it'll be for the first, second, and third place. Our monologue and sonnet packets, which are up and have been for a while now, the monologue packet now has over 260 monologues to choose from. And we've been very careful to mark the ones that are not available to be performed this year in red so that there are no mistakes. And we have new competition artwork, which I showed you in the original slide. And in that artwork, we brought back the picture, the sort of cartoon image of William Shakespeare that you love. And as I said, there are more things to come, including our yearbook that I believe hopefully most of you have received by now, The idea behind the yearbook was twofold. One was to thank our coordinators and branch presidents and branch members who dedicate so much time and energy to the competition. And the other was to provide the students with a tangible reminder of their connection to the ESU, to let them know that we value them, we care about them, while because of conditions beyond our control, we were unable to give them the weekend that we had hoped. Here they have a lasting, tangible reminder. And we plan on doing that next year, rather in 2021 again. So if we could talk very briefly about the Frankenstein competition. This was a partnership, and it's something that we're exploring more deeply. And it was one of the things that our branch members just mentioned in the last meeting about partnerships with other learning institutions. And so we partnered with the Morgan Library and Museum, as they had some really fantastic resources on Frankenstein. And for our English teachers in the room, you know that Frankenstein was written in a year that was called the year without a summer, because in fact, everyone was quarantined because of a natural disaster. And so that's how Mary Shelley and her friends got together, had a competition to see who could write the scariest story. And Mary Shelley indeed won, having written Frankenstein. We thought that was a great fit for what our kids are going through right now. The response was really terrific. 35 teachers from across the US signed up for a free PD, which was provided by the Morgan Library and Museum. We had 4 scaled prompts. They were rigorous but accessible for middle and high school students. At one point, we had 40 responses and we were happy. By the time we were done, we had over 200 from 15 states, including locations with no ESU branch. And part of the reason for that success is because we were promoted by what I like to think of as future partners, prestigious organizations such as the National Honor Society, the American Heritage Society, the National English Honor Society, and our friends in Kansas City know the Heart of America Shakespeare Festival. And those organizations picked up the competition, put it on their website, and helped us promote. This program was executed at very low cost with existing staff, very small prizes, but we think that the benefits are significant in that it increased exposure for the organization, for our branches, and for the Shakespeare competition. On the screen now, excuse me, are our deadlines and our prizes. And these have all been emailed to you. I think the most important thing to note is this. We're being very, very flexible this year in terms of deadlines and in terms of really any requirements. We understand that we're all in this together. This pandemic is throwing new challenges at us daily. And so we're very interested in making sure that our branches feel supported and secure and know that we are there to support them in whatever they need. And that we're respectful of the fact that conditions on the ground are changing daily. Excuse me. So now, please, if you have any questions or any comments, if time should run short, we would ask you to just type in our chat feature, and we will be sure to get back with you and answer any questions that you may have.
This is Dan Bukovac in Kansas City. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Hello.
Hi. We're on a state line, so we have school districts in 2 states and loads of different school districts, some large and some relatively small. Some of those schools are holding in-person classes. If that's the case for a school, do we still want to encourage them not to have a live competition, but to use one of these other formats? Letting them know, of course, that the branch competition is not going to be live, or should we discourage those live in-person competitions and ask them to conduct the school competitions in whatever way we're going to conduct the branch competition?
I definitely understand. It's a question of parity. Is it fair to the kids who compete live to be going up against kids who are recorded? Really, I guess in this case, this is going to be a branch level decision. We would recommend to everyone to have a remote competition just for the reasons of safety and liability. We don't know what could potentially happen. You can recommend to your schools that if they do have a competition, that they can do it remotely, that you'll accept that. On our school winter forms, we're requiring for every school that submits a school winter form that they allow us to upload a video. Even if the branch doesn't use those videos, they'll be really useful to us for the purposes of creating marketing and outreach in the future. The other thought behind that is that if a school does have a live competition, that there is some way to memorialize their winner's performance. Should you, as you said, have a remote competition and that student didn't record one for their school competition, if that makes sense. So I think the short answer is we should always err on the side of caution for the good of the students, but ultimately how much we can enforce our recommendations, be it on the national or the branch level, that's a decision that's going to have to be made on the ground, I think. And I hope that was helpful.
Well, I mean, bottom line, then we leave it to the school, and the schools would have three options. The two options that the branches have, plus just a regular live competition if they're in session, in person.
Right, exactly. I mean, if the school is determined to do it live and they're already open, then that's pretty much what's going to happen. And as long as they provide a video to you for your competition, then, beyond that, how much can we dictate? Now, if a branch wants to take a hard line and say, absolutely not, we want everyone to do a remote competition, or we strongly advise that you do a remote competition, then that's an option as well.
I was just going to throw in that the Kentucky branch, our Shakespeare competition is hosted by a plethora of theater type teachers, which we're very grateful to have them as our people who run our competition. And we all decided simultaneously that we felt that having an actual live virtual final was really important, because it does make it a lot more like being live theater. And who doesn't want to do Shakespeare in a live theater format? So I know that we purchased Zoom right now so that we can accomplish these things for our branch. As we could also hold our board meetings that way, for those of you who haven't figured out how to have your board meetings. Sometimes you just have to be creative with options, and you all modeled a pretty good format for us. What I'd like to ask you, though, Betty, and Josh as well, is if you can provide some banners and some things from National talking about some of the other programs that are available for the between competitor downtime while the judges are working. It would be good for all of us to have that throughout the states. So it could be upcoming things. And the other thing that I put up in the chat is, it would be really helpful, perhaps sometime before the national competition, to offer a masterclass, perhaps by one of the Globe practitioners themselves. They're out of work. We can help them. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we can afford to throw a little money toward London, where we hope our T-Lab scholars will be able to attend this year. And, and it's so valuable. And we can then go back and invite past scholars, because that can be PD for our teachers, theater teachers across the country. It would be very valuable.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Kate, because that's actually another initiative. We have at the ESU just an embarrassment of riches when it comes to the amazing teachers, active and retired, that are part of our membership, that are part of our circle. And so I will admit that I'm a bit shameless with asking for help from our teachers and listening to what they want and what they need. And so, for instance, the teacher that created the toolkit is going to be doing a webinar for our branches, for all of our teachers, that will be free. And she's going to explain exactly how to implement that. I have already planned another PD with a practitioner out of Southwest Shakespeare in Phoenix. I'm going to reach out to the Globe. Things there are a little dicey right now. Everybody has been furloughed and they're kind of getting their thing back together.
But they can do it by Zoom. They can do it.
Exactly.
And they can use the money. So I say
yeah,
if we
for
give
sure.
an actor, give them an hour of work, they'll take it.
For sure. I mean, what we're trying to do is sort of create partnerships. For instance, with the Frankenstein competition, there was a PD attached to that was free to teachers and free to the ESU because our partners picked up the cost. And anytime that we can think out of the box and maximize the relationships that we already have, that we can call a practitioner and say, you know, we'd love to do something live with you. Can you do something remote for us? We're also thinking of, so, I mean, and we haven't really rolled this out. I haven't fully discussed this with Karen, but one of the things that I'd like to do on our website is create a section where we get pre-recorded resources and just put them up, videos on voice, videos on presentation, videos on how to record a video, and just have a menu, a whole slate of resources for our teachers, because I think that we have, well, we do have a limited bandwidth. We do have the bandwidth to be a center of support, especially in these difficult times for our teachers. And that's sort of the direction that we're headed in. So we're absolutely on the same page. Those are just things that we're rolling out little by little. You know, the Frankenstein was us getting our feet wet, but that hopefully is just the first of many.
Thanks.
Sure, of course. Does anybody else have any questions?
Betty, yes, if you wouldn't mind, two issues. One is you raised the issue of legal responsibility in your thrust towards keeping everything off virtual. I'd like to understand from a corporate perspective, because we're looking at this certainly in Chile, the range of privacy and data protection issues that the children and schools insist on, and how you unify those and how you bring them together as a policy document for ESU. In obviously in the States you've got 61 different agencies, but is that unified at the federal level, or is it a state level? How do you manage the legal risks issue? In other words, do you publish a standard sort of catch-all protocol so that for example, and sorry to go on a bit, but we've just launched our virtual poetry recitation contest. We have about 180 kids have sent in videos, sort of waist up videos with a clear background and all that stuff.
Can I answer that? Can I address that? Because I think you hit it on the head with regard to the fact that we are states with different.
Yeah, exactly. I appreciate that. But just the issue is.
Let me finish. So we can in some ways dictate from a state level those kinds of things, which is why the cautious approach to what we're trying to do, meaning that we at this particular point are recommending that safety be the primary issue, and that as much as possible, these competitions for now maintain the virtual component.
Thank you, Karen. I appreciate that, but that's not quite the point I'm looking to address in this commentary. I started there because I heard it. However, when you go virtual, you're recording kids, and there is a data protection issue, and you've got the names and how they're addressed, and so we've got this whole issue about. And I was just going on to say about the poetry recitation. We don't want them to name their school. We don't want them to give their surnames. We want them to basically abide by very strict guidelines such that we can go on and use that in certain circumstances for teaching proper purposes and like. I just wondered if you have a template, because we're looking at the moment to start an audit of all our schools to try and bring that together at a national level in Chile. Clearly, Karen, as you were saying, state law and federal law are different, But I just think it's more in day-to-day management, whether it's whether when you record someone, you're immediately creating a contingency.
So just in a nutshell, we have put certain safeguards in place technologically. So for instance, we're telling the kids to upload their videos to YouTube, but to make them unsearchable. So the only way that anyone will be able to see that video ever is if they have the link. And there's also a disclaimer when they submit the link saying that they're allowing us the rights to use this video. Anyone who participates in the national competition, of course, also signs a rather lengthy disclaimer as well, and a photo release. So we're covered in that respect, but we're not making, for instance, the only things that are going up on the ESU YouTube channel will be the 50 finalists after they've already signed all these releases. So all the students from all the schools that are submitting to our branches, only our branches will have access to those videos. So just someone searching for a student's performance will not be able to find it. And so we're sort of safeguarding privacy in that.
I think
Jonathan, we could also supply you with the materials that we do send out if you'd like to see that.
I would love to see a copy. That'd be very, very useful. Thank you, Karen and Betty. This has been very instructive.
Understand, videos are also produced by the students. They're coming initially from the students. So it's in their control initially. So, but we'll send you what we have. Not to say with the growth of digital or any kind of digital communication, we have to be vigilant as things evolve and things start to change, because I think we're in new territory here. But as
I agree.
Send you what we have. Now,
Thank you very much.
We do have an insurance policy with riders, also a national insurance policy with riders that we also have in relation.
Would you mind sharing a copy of that policy without the header plate, so I can see the detail?
Also have that too.
Thank you.
Anyway, thanks.
Much appreciated, Betty and Karen. Thank you.
Oh, very welcome. You're very welcome.
And the branches in the past were required to have students at the branch competition sign photo releases. Is that photo release being revised to cover video? And maybe it was broad enough. I haven't looked at it in a while.
The photo release is actually already up on the website, and it does refer to images, but perhaps it wouldn't be a bad idea to revisit that. It is up.
Yeah, I think we should.
But,
I think we should, yeah.
Because we're still calling it a photo release, but it does refer to recorded images. So we are covered, but I will definitely look into that again just to be sure. And our branches are welcome to use those.
Just one quick point. We have as our clients or our members are the schools. And so, for example, the Nido Agnes, the American school, has a much stricter policy on data protection than a lot of the other schools in our members. So we need to understand what level we want to pitch it, so that the North America or the teachers or the kids from the North American school don't feel in some way handicapped from participating in a more broader. So it's finding that balance.
Sure, absolutely. But there's going to be a learning curve here. I mean, we're all being thrown into a situation that is unprecedented, and technology advancing faster than our laws can keep up. But all we can do is protect ourselves as best we can. As Karen said, we have insurance policies, we have photo releases, we have other releases that we have our national competitors sign to protect the organization. So that is something that we've considered. The other point that I'd like to raise, if I may, is that if you are having a live via internet competition, meaning that you're having the kids perform on Zoom, we highly recommend that you require a password. And I think Josh can speak to this more effectively than I can. It is a thing where people have been, what do they call it, Josh, where they're sort of sneaking into Zoom rooms to disrupt.
Zoom bombing.
Zoom bombing, thank you. So that's a thing, believe it or not. And, you know, coming in
Well,
and being disrupting.
Just
and,
real quick, I just want to say less and less, because now, unless you're using kind of a legacy meeting template, Zoom requires passcodes for pretty much any meetings. You have to opt out of.
Right. That's right. That's right. I've forgotten about that. So yeah, please don't opt out of the password. Make sure that anyone you're inviting into your live via internet competition is has been given a password. Are there any other questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Sure.
Hi. Hi, Betty.
Hey.
So last year you did away with the cold readings for the national competition. Was the reason for that having anything to do with the digital format?
No. No, the reason we got rid of the cold readings, honestly, is, and I don't know how many of you are familiar with this, but I used to be an English teacher here in New York City, middle and high school. And looking at the cold readings, what happened was we were at the 2019 competition, and a student who was, I believe, a finalist came to me and said, how do I pronounce this word? Which is fine, we're allowed to tell them that. And we did. But the student never asked what it meant. And that was very troublesome to me as an educator, that the student cared about how they sounded, but not about their understanding of the text. And that was kind of a wake-up call that the cold reading had kind of outlived its usefulness. That where it's supposed to be a measure of how quickly kids can scan, read, understand, process, and then perform a piece of language. Really what it came out to was how well can they fake it? And that's not really something that we wanted to be part of the competition. And so we've gotten rid of that. The branches, of course, are more than welcome if they want to have a cold reading, to have a cold reading. That again is up to them, but for the purposes of national, we just think it's kind of outlived its usefulness. And honestly, nobody missed it. We went forward with the finals without it, and the kids did their performances, and it was great. It was really terrific. We really enjoyed it.
So the reason I asked, so we've always modeled our competition off of nationals competition, just to give as much familiarity to the process as possible for the student, if that goes on to the national competition. One of the reasons, we love that part of it, or our members seem to like that part of the competition. Changing that to the format you have would mean we'd have to find, we have a hard time finding 4 judges to begin with. And then in addition, we'd have to find another 4 judges. And then that is almost, I feel like I almost have to get another person just to manage the judges. Make sure they show up on time, they're there, they have any questions that, that's, yeah. I mean, there would be almost as many judges as we have competitors. And it makes me a little nervous adding, that level of responsibility to our competition. And, and again, also they do, I see where what you say makes perfect sense, but so I don't know.
I can only tell you, in addition to the national competition, I also run the New York City competition. In New York City, we have an average between 50 and 70 kids every year. So we do 3 days of semifinals with no cold reads. And then we would do the finals with a cold read, again, to emulate nationals. And we took it out of the New York City competition last year. And we still only had 1 set of judges for our finals. It really was a seamless transition. No one seemed to miss it. It did shorten the competition a little bit, which actually was a good thing, because our partner, the Morgan Museum, was not happy to see us go, but happier to see people have more time to explore the space, which was really lovely. Again, we're not dictating to branches. If they want to have it, they should have it for sure. We recommended to schools that they should have, on the school level, have the kids do the sonnet, because a lot of schools weren't doing the sonnet. But again, that's a recommendation. At nationals, it's sonnet, it's monologue. But again, it's up to the branch to make that choice, whichever they prefer. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other questions? Or comments or insight? I also would like to say in whatever time we have left, and I know I'm running short here, that please understand that we work from a position of gratitude towards all of you for the time and energy and effort and resources that you put into this competition. That I believe that my job is to support you and to listen to our teachers. We are literally all in this together. And I think that working together and sharing ideas, it seems like we're on the same wavelength about this competition and about the future of it and about the future of the ESU and the wonderful things that we can do together for our young people and for our teachers and for our members. So if there aren't any other questions, I think it's about the floor. Yes.
Yeah, but talk about them. I'm sorry, I was at to be somewhere else.
No worries.
Yearbooks, are those available for purchase?
The yearbooks. The yearbooks, I hope you all enjoyed it. Just as a note, Randy, yours is in the mail. This time I have the right address, so you're gonna get yours. Karen, would you like to speak on the yearbooks? Because I don't think that that's something that we've kind of thought through. This was the first year that we did them.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was an experiment. I think it was an experiment given the fact that we were not together and we were trying to add value, because I think, God, we were all exploring COVID and we were concerned about the isolation and we were concerned about the connection. And it was Betty's idea. And I thought it was a good one. We also felt like it was our centennial year. So it's a centennial book also. I think that we didn't print a lot because it was experimental. We printed them for the Shakespeare coordinators, for the branch presidents, and for the board. So we don't have a lot, but I think that, I think we will continue doing it. I think we've gotten a very good response to it. So we'll keep going. What was the other question? How many do you want?
I was thinking it'd be nice to give one to some of the schools. I mean, how many, could we buy them and then give them to certain schools or teachers or so forth?
I see.
We didn't think of teachers. We thought of the Shakespeare coordinators and the branch presidents. Tell me how many you need and get back to Betty with how many you need. And
yeah, we could talk about that offline, Randy, and we'll figure out a number and see what the printer has to say, and we'll explore it. And if there's anyone else that would like extra copies for their teachers, please email me and let me know. And I'm happy to serve, and I'm happy to look into it. And see
I have a
possible.
question about the book. Is there any hope or any opportunity or any plans to create a book that shows all of the national winners through all the years that we've had the Shakespeare competition, rather than the current year? Is there any hope of that?
It's so lovely to see you. That's a great question. And the answer is we can try. However, I don't know if we have all those pictures archived. So I don't want to give away any secrets of things that we wanted to do for the next edition, because we do want to keep it fresh and new and exciting. I know we do have every single one of our programs from the very first.
Wow.
But do we have pictures of the kids from the very first? That's going to take a little bit of looking, and you're giving us some good ideas.
You could just list the names. The names also are, the state that they're from. That would be just as fine.
That we do have. We could.
That we do have.
We could put the historical names, which would be kind of interesting, because we do have that as a start. That would be interesting to do.
Yeah.
All the people that participated.
That's a great idea, Sylvia.
I mean, it's a great idea. I mean, we're trying to get, we're trying to get the anniversary book done also. So we are digging up a lot of material. Do we have consistently information for every year? I don't know the answer to that yet.
Question, Karen. How relevant, inverted commas, is the certificate or winner status in an ESU event in the USA in terms of someone's curriculum, maybe wanting to show it off in a job search or in the future? Does it have that status, or are we talking about just a social sort of gong?
Eddie, do you want to talk about the history of some of our winners who've gone on?
Yes, absolutely. It turns out that some of our, well, first let's start with this. I think we all know, are all aware of the recent passing of Chadwick Boseman, the African-American actor who portrayed the Black Panther, and he attended the exact same school that our winners attend, which is the BADA, the British American Drama Academy. And so that is a very prestigious thing to have on your resume, that you were part of a competition where the prize was so significant as that. Our second place prize is to the American Shakespeare Center. They have certainly cranked out their share of very prominent actors. And we've had quite a few. I think the latest one is there was a young man from New York City who recently played Henry IV, Henry V, excuse me, on a special on HBO. He didn't win the competition. But yes, it's a fantastic thing for kids to have on their CVs when applying for college. The fact is our competition is 38 years old. We are older than the Thespians. We are older than Poetry Out Loud. Really, the ESU deserves full marks for being innovators in every aspect of educational programming.
And I just want to point out that many of the people, the young people, like our Adam Brown, who won his year, are working as professional actors, and they should not be that difficult to track down. If you ask them for a current photograph, I bet you anything, most of them would be delighted to send it in for your book.
Well, there's a big project to get to give some student the task of doing a cross-reference of past winners and creating a fascinating, maybe even you could sell the book. People would, just an idea, but it has enormous status, and I think the more we can work with enhancing the status, the better the value to anybody participating in the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
Students have come back and actually been judges too. We do that in New York City. We do that with students who've come through, who are now in major drama schools, that come by and actually judge for us.
Serve as judges. And this past year, one of our alumni was actually appearing on Broadway in To Kill a Mockingbird and had arranged for our students to go backstage. And then along came COVID and ruined everything, sadly. But yeah, our competition has fostered a lot of fantastic talent and a lot of goodwill, and it is very prestigious and it is very old, and of course I'm so proud of it. So
it doesn't show.
We all are. I love it. I think it's wonderful.
Stephen, do you do in Chile? Do you do anything similar to this? Do you have a Shakespeare competition?
Do we have what? Sorry, I didn't catch you.
Do you do a competition similar to this?
Oh, we do all the things. We do public speaking, debating, poetry recitation, writing competition, spelling bees. We have those 5 events on an annual basis. We have about 1,700 students participated last year.
Do you do a Shakespeare competition? No.
Do we do what? No, we don't. We did in the old days, but the international side of that was curtailed, and it's something which is on our back burner to pick up again, because I think certainly Shakespeare is a great motivator and certainly if one's looking at language, it's a great way of forming people who are Spanish speakers, because they will know, or they would like to know, something about Shakespeare.
Anyway, I'm told, I think we have to move on because
I've been monopolizing. Yeah, thank you very much. Very good session.
No, thank you, Stephen, so much. Jonathan, I'm sorry, but you know, it's been lovely having you here. Thank you. And we're going to move on now to Evelyn Wrench.
Okay, hi everyone. I just started sharing my screen. Okay. So I am Helena Fontaine. I'm the executive assistant for Karen. And since last February, I've also coordinated the Wrench Speaker program. The program is named in honor of the English Speaking Union's founder, Sir Evelyn Wrench. And it brings eminent British and American speakers each year to the ESU branches who host their presentations. Wrench speakers address topics relating to current events, history, language and literature, art and architecture, and travel. Regional tours of Wrench speakers are underwritten by the ESU national headquarters and are planned in cooperation with the branches. So originally, all Wrench speakers do in-person presentations in events hosted by the ESU branches. And the headquarters is responsible for organizing the tours of the speakers and covering all travel expenses. Now, of course, due to COVID, all Wrench speaker events are held online. So this year, the first speaker was Elizabeth St. John, who spoke about her book, Lady of the Tower, which takes place in 17th century England. It's a story of her ancestor, Lucy. Elizabeth was raised in England. Her research has taken her to family memoirs and letters at Nottingham Castle, the British Library, the Tower of London, Yale University, and of course, the family seat of Lydiard Park. The first tour of Elizabeth started in February, and she visited our branches in Central Florida, Savannah, Atlanta, and Jacksonville. And the second tour started early March, and she had the chance to visit New Orleans, Denver, and Kansas City before COVID forced the cancellation of the rest of the tour to Memphis and Nashville. Elizabeth was also the speaker of the first national online event, and it went very well. I think we had approximately 100 participants watching that. And because that was so successful, we started to look for other speakers who would like to do online events as well. So in October, we had another national online event with Anna Maria Dalanese, whose speech was a tour of Shakespeare's London. And Anna Maria works as a Blue Badge Guide of London, where she conducts private tours to domestic and international clients. And prior to settling in Britain, she lived in different countries over 4 continents and developed her passion for the arts and foreign languages. Besides sharing her knowledge of the history of London with her visitors, Anna Maria is currently conducting anthropological research at the doctoral level and is completing her second self-published book. Her event as well went well. I think we had about 200 people watching that. So another speaker that we had planned for last spring was Sir Christopher Hum. Unfortunately, we needed to cancel his tour, but we're still communicating with him and looking forward to have him as a Wrench speaker in near future. Christopher has been observing developments in China for over 40 years. He lived there for 10 years as a diplomat and was British ambassador to China between 2002 and 2005. And in his lecture, he recalls the life and times of an ambassador in Beijing. the people he met, and the places he visited. And he discusses the place of China in the 21st century. So hopefully we will be able to organize his tour again. Next month, we will have another online event. The speaker is Hilary Davidson. She is the author of Dress in the Age of Jane Austen. Hilary is a dress, textile, and fashion historian curator. Her work encompasses an extraordinary understanding of how historic clothing objects come to be and how they function in culture. In the presentation, Hilary is analyzing historical and archaeological material culture artifacts, and she has also produced influential academic research on that topic. That event is going to be on November 17th, and we will send the registration and the invite out soon. Then we wanted to mention the Wrench Speaker Series endowment and thank our generous supporters. The endowment is part of the Centennial fundraising campaign launched in April, and funding this endowment will allow the program to continue in perpetuity while keeping the cost to our branches as low as possible. So then the speaker source list is finally on our website. It is a document that lists 40 speakers that the branches can contact themselves. It was created to support branches' own speaker events. So the speakers have been categorized based on the topic of the speech, and it also mentions if they do online events. The source list also has other important practical information on the events, for example, the technical requirements and the ticket sales. So everyone can access it on the website. The password is Wrench2020. Okay, thank you so much. Any questions?
I just
Yeah, who could we invite to attend? I've just mentioned that I'm also a member of the Jane Austen Society, and they would love to attend. I mean, how public could we make it?
Well, we actually got the speaker that the Hilary is actually from the Jane Austen Society in New York. So we got her from the Jane Austen Society. But I wanted to mention too that we encourage, and one of the things that we've been finding with the Zoom versions of the Wrench speaker is that when the branches go out and start inviting people within their own community, that's how we get the 200 number. That's how we get the 200 people numbers. So we would encourage you to, when the link goes out, to invite as many as you like.
Karen?
Yes.
Have we had direct contact with the Royal Oak Society? They have a marvelous list of speakers and programs, and I'm wondering what kind of collaboration we can have with them.
We are collaborating with the Royal Oak Society and Royal Historic Palaces, and we've collaborated when we could, but we have a regular dialogue with them. In a way, we're kind of competing a little bit with them at the moment,
right.
so because everyone's doing online, so. We were really in discussion with them more when we had when we were actually doing when we were sending people around the country, because they were very interested in markets that they traditionally don't go into. Mm-hmm. So we were talking about partnering with them to go into other cities that normally they wouldn't send people into. But with the online component, we're kind of a little bit in competition with each other. So it's not as easy, but I'm sure it'll come back once we get back into the regular Wrench series.
And not necessarily a question, I just want to add something to Helena's presentation, is that how things worked when we weren't dependent on the internet, when things were done in person. And Wrench speakers, when she mentioned that it was in collaboration with local branches, it really is on a regional basis. And regions were originally kind of the organizing element to which we sent and were created for the purpose of the Evelyn Wrench speaker event. So in collaboration with regional people in the future, when we can again, Helena will be essentially polling regions for speakers that are interesting and enticing for their membership, and then arranging the travel, airfare, and inter kind of branch travel that happens as well for the speaker, which is another important part of this, because I know that since the French speaker was on hiatus previously and then transferred over to the internet, there might be some new branch presidents who aren't familiar or haven't worked with it. But I wanted to give that bit of context as well, because hopefully in the future we can return to that same model.
And I just wanted to add to that, that when we had relaunched the program in the spring, we were getting, as Helena mentioned, we were getting some very good responses from the speakers. We were getting, branches that had over 100 to 150 people that were attending the event. And most of the branches have always said to us, which is why we hope that, COVID goes away and we can launch this again, that it was one of their best ways of getting new members.
That's right.
Was through the Wrench Speaker Program. Yeah. That's how they got most of their new members, was through the Wrench program. So we're looking to get it for it to come back. The other side to it is not, and I don't know if this has changed, but not all of the speakers are that we have, because when we solicited the book that we have, the speakers that we have, not all of them are easily adapting to online. Some of them are challenged by it, because it's not an easy medium sometimes for people to adapt to. So I think that particularly with Christopher Hum just didn't want to do an online presentation. We asked if he would. And he was somebody that, was a very popular speaker that people were looking forward to.
That's right.
Can I ask a quick question about competition? Because you mentioned it just now, Karen, about feeling that the idea of our events in the past have been sort of siloed, whereas now with the virtual platforms, they're so much more open geographically, topographically, internationally than they would have been hitherto. Whereas maybe in the US you do local or statewide events for each of the branches, whereas now whether you do it locally, internationally, or nationally, in fact, it really is a matter of what time of day it is when the person logs in. Just wondering, has there any consideration been given to this, even after, or let's say when we get back to a new normal? Because my experience, obviously I'm not a teacher, therefore I don't have to do this every day in a mandated way. Just the scope of the sharing of information and experiences now was hitherto really not taken on board, but now with the 6 months or more of experience, people are thinking, wow, I don't need to organize airfares, I don't need to organize board and lodging, and if we can get over the hump of doing things virtually as opposed to in a big aula, then maybe there are two channels in future, whereas historically we only had one.
Well, I agree. And it's interesting because the most recent speaker that we had who did a tour of Shakespeare's London, she's a tour guide. She would not be a traditional Wrench speaker because she's not somebody that would come to the United States. Her bread and butter is really taking people on tours in the UK. So that was an opportunity that we had that we probably wouldn't have had in the past, which was great. I do want to say one thing, and I know that the branches and the branch representatives will agree with me, is the advantage that we have over so many of our competitors is our regionality and our branch structure. So I think that our ability to focus in regionally is our strength. So why we are out there competing now with Royal Oak and historic Royal Palaces. I think that when we get back to what our norm is, which is the strength of our regions and our regionality, that we're always, I think that's healthier for us as an organization. I think that's what we bring to the table that our competitors don't have. So I think there's something to be said for both. at this point. And I do think it's never going to be the same. It will be a hybrid reality that we're going to have going forward.
Thank you. I'd agree with on the hybrid or sort of a blend. But again, I'd assume that most events are now for free, because it's very unusual to have paid events. Given it seems to be that most people will sign up for a free event, but certainly in this part of the world, you would be very unusual to have people joining up on an event and having to pay even a notional $20 or something.
Well, from the way that we've done it with the Wrench speaker is that it's been underwritten by National and that's why we're trying to grow this endowment. And the branches have the option of charging, and we leave that to the branch to charge on a local level. Now that we're doing it nationally, these are all free events. The only thing that we might pay is an honorarium to a speaker, which is minimal.
Thank you.
Karen, I have a quick question. And Helena, I've been in contact with about 7 or 8 authors of well-regarded books that have been well reviewed in the New York Times and et cetera. And they're interested in doing virtual events with us. And I've been in contact with the Athenaeum Library of Boston, the Union Club, the New England Genealogical Society, and they're all interested in collaborating with us. What I'd like to do is open up those programs to a nationwide ESU audience. Now, I've been in contact with Karen regarding the happy hour situation, but when I've talked to a couple of the authors and had conversations with them, they're concerned that the seriousness of their topics does not lend itself to a happy hour context. And I'm wondering if there's a sort of a separate channel, a separate series that we can have in which ESU National sponsors these author events via Zoom and opens it up to all of the branches without the individual branch presidents reaching out.
Well, I think that's going to, we could discuss that offline. I do have the list that you sent, Paul Bogosian, and I know that you were speaking with Karen Blair Brand in relationship to the happy hour. So I think that we could discuss it. I mean, we could discuss it with, can we bundle it into the Wrench program if you wanted to keep it with Wrench? Or I don't know what your discussion was with Karen, but why don't we take that offline, okay?
Okay, fine. We'll discuss that. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Josh, did you want to add anything from a historical perspective in terms of the Wrench program?
I think one other thing that I neglected to add that for people who might not be familiar is that while the national organization does underwrite the cost of transportation, flying them over from overseas usually, and the transportation between branches, the lodging is usually the responsibility of the branch. And that's usually actually a branch member who opens the doors to their home to the speaker and has them stay with them. Usually an officer, a board member, or the president, but it varies. Sometimes it's just a member who would like to spend more time with an illustrious speaker, and that's fine as well. But that's the other part that some people might not be aware of, is that the lodging, while everything else is taken care of nationally in terms of the coordination, the lodging does fall under the responsibility of the branch.
And there's really nothing new about that. We've been doing that for years. That's right.
Yes, correct. The program has been on hiatus for a number of years, and we might have some new presidents who aren't aware. But yes, correct. That is the way it's been done historically.
I think though that now that we have Zoom, I think once we get back into the swing of the old model, it'll probably be a lot easier coordinated through Zoom. Not that we'd have the speakers through Zoom, but just coordinating the branches through Zoom.
Right, exactly.
But we had an amazing response in the spring in terms of branches that wanted the speakers. And as I said, we had an incredible response. The registrations for most of the speakers were really kind of high, and the branches were really happy. So I think we're at, Julia, did you want to say anything else?
No, I just wanted to thank everybody for participating. These are topics that came from branch members. And certainly our speakers have been more than generous with looking at it in a way that is branch centered. And so I really appreciate both our presenters and you all for coming and listening and asking good questions. This series will continue with other people on Friday afternoon, and I hope that you'll join us then. Thank you so much for being here.
Julia, so just review what we're going to do on Friday.
On Friday, we're going to have a program on, I'm going to pull it from another pile. We're going to be talking about, sorry, excuse me. We're going to have Alex Uhl, who's also from the national staff, and she's going to look at several other programs, including Lord Morse Scholarship. She's also going to take a look at the T-Lab scholarships for educators, and then she and I are going to take a look at the T-Lab experiences for adult learners, since I participated in From Page to Stage in 2017. And so then the second one is on Zoom, because a number of our people are still reluctant about using Zoom to communicate with their members. And so during one of our roadshows, Susan Moffett-Thomas mentioned that she wanted in this year or this time frame to teach her fellow members of the New Bern branch, Colonial North Carolina, how to use Zoom. And so Susan and I have been talking, and she's going to address that as an issue. And then I'm going to take a look at some hints and tricks and reminders about Zooms for those people who are perhaps not as well educated about it or want to learn more. And then we are blessed to have our special resource in Josh Keppel-Gonzalez, and he's going to be a part of this program and answer any questions in areas where Susan and I may falter. So we're lucky to have him a part of it. So thank you, Karen, for asking.
No, thank you. I also wanted to mention, before we had mentioned the EIA program, and on Thursday, we're actually going to be doing an EIA session with 2 of the volunteers and 2 of the students, which would be interesting since we're getting into our programmatic things. So thank you so much, Julia.
My pleasure. Been a lot of fun.
And Jonathan, did you have another question before we sign off?
Yes, I'd just like to get a general feel. How much of the UK oracy bent have you adopted in terms of pushing the theme or the comment of oracy as the ability to basically get your voice out, and because we had some very positive feedback from a teacher webinar from a person called Alan Hauer who works for Cambridge Oracy, and I just wonder whether that's something which you'd be interested in.
Yeah, I mean, Betty and I have been talking about it. We were talking about it last year, and then COVID hit, but we are thinking that maybe we need to, it's been a while since we participated. Josh, do you remember the last time we participated in the ROC program? How long has it been?
The International Public Speaking competition? 2 years ago.
2018, during the centenary.
Yeah, that's when it was sort of starting to take shape.
Yeah.
But the whole theme and bringing it also together with Zoom, what was very useful was a teacher training course built around oracy, but helping teachers get over the hump about how they delivered their classes in a virtual environment. So that was very successful. It was an 1.5-hour session and really worked very well. So it was a blend of Zoom technology, breaking down the barriers, having teachers talk about good and bad experiences, and then also lacing it with the theme of oracy and getting the pupils to come forward and developing confidence. So I just wondered if that was a theme. I think Jane would be very quick to promote that, because Jane works very closely with the team from Cambridge Oracy in the UK.
Well, in truth, as a retired educator, RC is not RC is not a subject taught in American schools.
Yeah, it isn't a subject taught here either. But at the end of the day, it's
trying to I mean, I think it's going to be a little bit of time after we revert to normal existences. We hope, which will be soon. But I think that the educators in schools are going to need some reasonable time to kind of smooth things out after COVID, whenever that happens. But that is one of the issues, is that we are such a test-directed environment. That too may change after COVID, but you know, that still remains to be seen. A lot of universities are no longer requiring all of the testing coming in to apply for. I was sitting in on a college Zoom meeting just the other day for alumni admissions correspondence, and many schools, colleges, and universities are now not requiring all that testing.
SAT.
So that may be something that will change, but at the moment, you know, probably to take on anything new where the educators are having to learn how to use Zoom as a teaching tool, they're going to need to recover from that. And I'm a realist, and I mean, we were very impressed when we were I guess it was when we were in Lisbon, that there was a presentation on RSE to the ICM, and we found it to be extraordinarily interesting. Karen and I were there as delegates for that meeting, and you know, I just think it's that there's a lot on the plate of educators right now, and it'll have to be introduced in a way that is very supportive.
Agreed, Julia, and it was in Lisbon that we first really got the doses of RSE, and it's making its way slowly into the UK curriculum and like numeracy and other literacy, and RSE being the other one, which is so people are unfamiliar with it, but as soon as you get the bug, it becomes so natural to.
Yes. I'm sorry, Karen, I interrupted you.
No, I thank you again, Julia, and I think this has really been an amazing session. Thank you for putting it together.
Well, thank you all for being here.
Very useful. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Until next time.
Bye. Have a great day.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
4 o'clock if you're coming to the Breakout.